submitted questions, which are great. A couple of you had the same types of questions. So just because it didn't show up on here in this format doesn't mean you still can't ask it today in this format, or call me later, call Louisa and send it in through her. So it's still an ongoing open door with the discussions, and especially with our new folks. There are no, silly questions. So you could ask anything you need, and we'll be happy to explain that to you. So one of the questions came in about, enrollment. It's a great question. So if the numbers are trending downward, do we still need the same, did we take that into account? Why isn't the budget asked less than 3 million? So it's a great question. So we did have a significant decline in a categorically with a certain population across the school system. So while categorically that we dipped, and it does reduce some costs, and those of you who've been participating in this a long time, every year we have a significant second language learner need, right? Almost every year that I've been involved in the budget process, we've had, at least a half a dozen or so positions that were requested for second language learners, because that was a continually growing sector of our population, and they have legally required services. So with the decrease, we did not really need to ask for additional staff. We have a couple, there might be one staff member in there for a school that still has a number that needs to be addressed. But across the board, when we dip down, this is incremental across the system. So between K-12, you have a sprinkling. So all of those students are spread out across the system. So we might have a couple in a school in grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and then another school. So over time, if we continue to trend down towards the end of the year, and we'll continue to reevaluate it, we might be able to reduce a little bit in terms of FTEs. However, it's not a wholesale, like, whoop, we don't need 20 people anymore. They're incremental. They're FTEs that might be here and there at the end of the year. That's what we would anticipate. So it's not like we're a complete overhaul in the way that we're staffing for the Danbury Public Schools. So we've accounted for this in our ask. We haven't asked for any. And in fact, some of the staff that we have internally, we might be able to move a little bit around to service some areas that were on the heavy side last year. So what it means is it brings our numbers down to a little bit more manageable levels, but it's not quite enough to pull away the infrastructure for staffing, because 65% of our staff, about 36% of our students still are second language learners. So we still have quite the need there. However, for the first time in many years, that did not go up. And we may, see a little bit of reprieve towards the end of the year if our numbers keep ticking downward. And certainly the registrations over the summer will tell another story to us to see if this kind of holds this pattern. Coupled with that, so, all of that said, so while the numbers, I think it's in 2018, we haven't seen the enrollment numbers since pre-pandemic. Unfortunately, the cost of special education services, regular cost of living, contract increases, and inflation are not our 2018 prices. So I would love for that to also rewind, but it's just really the enrollment component. So I just want to make sure that part of it was clear. We did take that into account into our budget. It's one of the reasons why we're able to kind of hold steady in some areas and float a little bit, if you will. But mostly, health insurance, even though we are reducing the number of people in the volume, health insurance for everybody else around us is going up still, right? 10%, 12%. So, that those numbers continue to rise, even though we're offsetting this year. Transportation is a big driver. That contract every single year from this point forward for the next 3 or 4 years will be 6% on top of the year prior, which is huge, which accounts for another large driver. Utilities have gone up. Bringing on this building that I'm in right now is a huge utility driver. As you can imagine, it's fully air conditioned. And that's something that, over the course of the year, we're seeing that those numbers are up. So in addition to the mandated services, across. So yes, the enrollment is starting to trend down. It's in a category and it's spread across the system. We may see more gains once we kind of break a threshold where we're past just ratio reduction and we can consolidate and collapse some areas, but we're not quite there yet. And I will keep the board apprised as we if we should reach that. I don't want to forget to mention, the picture on the lower hand right corner of the slide. That was Danbury High School just last year before we opened this building. Okay. So when you see that, when I say that these numbers are incremental, I mean, because we were crowded, maxed out in all areas. So reducing some students is great in terms of helping to thin out some of, what our population and the crowding, but we're not quite there at the place where I'd feel comfortable removing staff from the equation, if that makes sense to everybody. Okay. I'll take any follow-up questions on that if there's any. If not, I can go on to the next question.
I don't see any questions on this one.
Great.
Okay.
All right, Ken, next slide, please. It's only about 5 or 6 slides, so it's not too long, but the answers are good questions. I mean, the questions are good questions. One of the question is, how are we, and this is a big one, it's on my mind, how are we planning for the flat funding of Alliance, right? So what are we going to do knowing this? So again, part of our ask, and this kind of goes back to, I don't know if Juanita's on the call tonight. I don't see her on the grid. She might be. Oh, she is. Hi.
She is here. Yeah.
Thank you. One of the questions Juanita had is, and it was one I wrestled with and have been wrestling with, do you have everything that you need? Well, we might not have everything that we need at the moment, but knowing also we're having a responsible reset period right now, and we're going to fill the positions that have been vacant. But in addition to that, we haven't planned any large scale, with staffing heading into an era where we're a little unsure of the funding. So in terms of the Alliance being flat funded, our budget this year assumes that flat funding in next year. We've incorporated that into our budget and took the savings that we could maximize for next year. And then for fiscal year 28, there's a question mark on there. We're not slated to receive an increase. However, there are aggressive conversations happening right now in the legislature around cost of living adjustments to ECS, the formula base hopefully being changed. But we can't plan on a hope and a prayer. We have to plan on what we know to be true right now. And so our ask again, you don't see, outside of opening up the last phase of the high school, you don't see a huge staffing ask from me, because I don't want to have to walk that back in the form of, potential layoffs in a year or two if we're continue to be flat funded. So we have to be very careful about jumping out of the box too heavy in a climate where we've got some unknowns with our ECS. Again, I have confidence in our legislators that they're working on the formula, but until I see it, we have to be very cautious. Okay. We intentionally not, diving into a lot of, there's a lot of things with the academies that we want to get involved in. You can see the pictures here. When you do great things with students and provide opportunities and you're heavy CTE and STEM, there's equipment that comes with that. So we want to be able to responsibly sustain that moving forward. So we have some room in our budget this year to buy a lot of equipment. So we're planning for our needs for the next year or so by purchasing some of that equipment now so that we can take care of the academies and make sure the pathways have everything that they need. We are going to be watching that enrollment trend super carefully, rather than just, okay, we haven't gone backwards in a while. We haven't had a retraction in so long. So every year we've been adding. So this is a moment to take pause, analyze our enrollment trends, and then make the necessary adjustments, again, with a scalpel, very fine, tuned decision-making with that. We're monitoring all of the policies right now that are out there. We're monitoring legislation, monitoring what's happening at the federal government. I have a slide. I'll show you something that it just came today. I got one from our State Department, and then they issued another one kind of confirming today, and I'll pull that up. That's the next slide. But we are also, in terms of the planning piece, special ed is always a consideration, mandated services, that we always in those areas always plan for the unexpected. You have to plan a little bit for unexpected because those can be volatile numbers with just a couple of students with really high needs. And outside of that, we're working on, internal controls financially so that we're maximizing every dollar that comes on the table. And that is something that I think, the team is very proud of. We're spending a lot of time looking at budget and analyzing that budget so that we know what's in it, and that's mostly the spending patterns and where we may have not as been efficient in the past. So I think we're proud of those efforts. The budget this year takes that into consideration very heavily. And that's where you see the ask that you do this year. Should we continue to get flat funded, we could see a consolidation of services. If our enrollment goes down, we might be able to collapse some classes and move staff and group differently, saving some money there. But also, if enrollment continues to go, we may want to talk about how to consolidate across the school system in terms of facilities, staffing, and how that goes. So really depends. That enrollment conversation is going to be a critical one over the next year. Any questions on that? Minnie's question is, how much does this budget rely on no one-time funds? We are those days. So ARPA is dries up after this year. We have that ARPA money reimbursement that's coming back into our budget that we have available to spend, which is great. We're going to need to maximize that. But we really don't. There are very small grants this year that may dry up, but it's nothing substantive like some of the money that we've had in the past, which is good because that's created cliffs for us that we've had to rely on. So we'll always have one-time grant money that comes and goes, but it's not, we don't have large grants and large swings like we have in the past, even most recently. Okay. My biggest concern were the title grants, but this next slide should make us feel a little bit better. Ken, can you, I'm not getting used to the floating thumbs just yet. Oh, that's a new feature. Okay, so this is the note I wanted to share with everybody. So this came in today that Congress approved an appropriation for education. So they finally settled on it between the House and all the groups that needed to look at this. So the House representatives voted and passed the FY26. So what happens is this funding gets set and it gets distributed in the fall, and then you have 2 years to spend it. And so if you want to look by the bullets, this is the most important. There are changes in K-12 funding over last year's level. So Title I is going to get a $20 million increase. IDEA, Kelly, you'll like this, $20 million increase. Rural education, that is not us. Head Start, child care development, 85 million. The EIR took a huge hit, but that's less impactful at the school level, more about for district and decision makers, where a lot of our research and data comes from to make decisions. And then K-12 levels are funded at the fiscal 25 funding level. So in terms of the title grants, it looks like I don't see anything about Title II, Title IV, but it looks like they're stable according to this. Still digging into finding out all the different grants that fall in between these grants to make sure that they're stable. Still leaving that $500K on the table to offset anything. But outside of the federal government and Congress, which seems to, I have this, remember, because of our enrollment and our second language learner category that is extra weighted in the formulas, it could go down because of enrollment even if Congress maintains our funding levels. So that's again another thing that we have to continue to monitor. But I wanted to share this because this is hot off the presses. Okay. And I'll go to the next question. Happy to come back to this if there's a lot in here. Ken, could you go to the next slide, please? We had a question about what did the budget development process look like and were the principals involved? And so, making sure that there was some stakeholder involvement. And so the budget timeline was not SR&ED. The budget timeline was shared and stakeholders met with the CFO and cabinet members for planning purposes. So we did not shred the budget. That's what happens when you rush. So basically, we submit, we have a timeline. Ken, can you click on that budget development timeline and process link, please? Oh, Lord. Okay. Yeah, request access. Well, oh, that might not even come to me. That might go to Kara Pompano. That's okay. Can you go back out to the other slide? We're just going to pivot. So this is a document. Good thing I took a screenshot of it. So we have got an internal calendar that gets shared with our staff here to keep us on track during the budget development process. And I apologize, I can't show you the actual full document. But basically, yes. So the answer is yes. So the principals did meet. So you can see that we have a kind of a kickoff in December where there's a lot of development. And then in early months, in the early weeks in January, the CFO meets along with assistant superintendent, chief of schools, principals and program leaders, depending on who supervises which department. There's a collaborative conversation about those needs. The needs are recorded. And then what happens at the end of that process, I get a big packet that kind of comes to me to say, these are all the things that folks are requesting. Some are absolutely critical because they're service-based or they're legally required. Some are, I would really love to have this. Yay. Thanks, Ken. That means Kara Pompano is, is home clicking on permissions. And so we go through and it's a pretty all consuming process. Some, the people are behind closed doors for weeks on end to develop out the process in terms of the ask. And, this year, many years, I've been here a long time. So the budget process looked like, don't ask for too much, like that was the conversation. What do you absolutely need? This year we said, tell us, if you could change things, if you can, make improvements in your building, what would that look like? And what would you need to kind of pull that off? And for the most part, the PLCs, and I mentioned this before in another meeting, the PLCs is a big issue. And what those are professional learning communities where teachers can meet during the day to collaborate around student data and to push on that work. And to do that, you need subs or extra special area teachers to do that work. And so that would equate to, 5, 6, 7 additional, FTEs in the budget, or 5 or 6 or 7 roving staff substitutes that go from building to building to building on a rotating basis to release the teachers so that they can do some of that work. So that would have been a very, very big ask. So we're kind of just holding on to that. It's something that we want to get to. But we need to kind of get through this budget cycle as part of the reset. We have a difficult time getting subs in our district. So adding that into the budget and not being able to fund that. We had that happen this year. I've had cadre subs in our Alliance grant for almost 3 years in a row and haven't been able to fund it because I can't get the right staff members. So we're going to hold for a little bit on that, even though it's needed and desired. That's a big thing. The additional request in everybody's minds, of course, is coaching. The coaching is important because it helps, increase instructional improvement right at the classroom level, and delivery to students where we need it most. So those are things that you'll see in an upcoming budget, in a future budget. Once we get a handle on our staffing, you'll start to see, those things layered in along with some of our classroom supports. But there was a lot of participation. Principals all had lengthy meetings with CFO and with the various supervisors involved. And then it's a lot of backroom work to assess those requests and to parse through those as absolutely critical, mission critical, and nice to have, or these would be really good to help move the needle here. So, the one thing I'll say is, we made some nice improvement last year. That's really hard work and requires a lot of staff and attention, that hands in the mix. So, for any continued improvement in the district, we're going to have to continue to support the student support area in the future. But yes, the answer is yes. We've had a lot of participation in this year's budget and collaboration, and the principals, were great. It was great to hear what they needed. It was good dialogue. It was great Mike, to hear that from on the school side. You do a lot of accounting all day long, but to really hear the needs of the school system helps to build an understanding and a vision for financial planning for the future. What were the community's 3 type priorities? Good question. I don't have it with me, but on in hand. After school programming, safety and security was another one. And there was one more. After school programming was big, safety and security, and I have to go back to the other one, but it was mostly I think it was like security.
Smaller
Security.
class sizes was up there,
Thank
Karen.
you. Class sizes, Mike. Thank you for jumping in. Yeah, and class sizes, making sure that those are down. And with the enrollment, if we're holding on to staff right now, and as the enrollment dips down a little bit, there's a tiny bit of relief across the system. Not massive, but just enough, I think, to make a difference. Thanks, Mike.
I don't see any other questions, Kara, so.
Okay. Ken. Please. We did that one. And Tony doesn't know it, but he's the star of one of the stars of my PowerPoint here. I'll have to let him know. Question came in of how were decisions made on capital improvement project submissions? So like how do we come about that list? And how does something get on the list? And I'll let Mike speak to that a little bit, but basically, we've opened up the doors with the city and, having just open conversations about the needs internally and getting that kind of agreed upon with what are the big projects out there. There's only a limited pot of money to work with. So, you could put a list of 100 things on the list. It doesn't, if you get 1 or 2 things checked off the list, it's a slow, incremental and responsible, way to slowly improve facilities. So there's the stuff that we do internally, and then there are the items that the city's responsible for. And Mike, submitted this over to the city. Mike, I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Kara. So, and I think we did talk through the list in one of our sites meetings prior to the holidays, because we submit this over, I think it's the end of October, early November. I can't remember the exact date. A lot of times the items on this list will stay the same. And as Kara mentioned, there's a very limited pot of money that goes into capital for the entire city, and only the schools will get a portion of that. So for us, it was a pretty easy prioritization this year because we really want to get the walls put in at KSP. We know we have that construction grant with the state, but we have to put forward our piece of the funding initially in order to get the reimbursement. So for us, it was kind of a no-brainer that the walls at KSP were going to be right up top, and then also the AIS retaining wall, which we've talked about. They were able to secure the wall, make sure it stopped moving. They were able to remove the load from it, but we're still not able to use those parking spaces on the east side of that area. And that's just causing some additional traffic problems and parking problems at AIS. And also, we just want to make sure that wall is safe and secured for decades to come. So those are really the top 2 projects we had on here. Both of those projects, from what I understand, would be above and beyond the total budget that Antonio would have access to. So those are our top 2, and we'll work with them as appropriate to navigate those. Immediately below that, we know we have needs around windows. We have older windows that are just not very efficient. They're they make the schools a lot colder than they need to, and that contributes to a lot of our concerns about classroom temperatures, and also things like safety as well. So we had 3 schools on there that needed full window replacements, 3 small elementary schools. And then beyond that, it's just sort of the ongoing wish list of things that we would really love to have. But really the top of that list is the sort of critical needs that we know year to year. We're going to keep rolling them forward and keep pushing on those as our critical needs.
Thanks, Mike.
Any questions on this part? Committee members, non-committee members? This is open to all board members, so anybody ask questions. Nope. Okay.
Ken, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, another question came in, kind of a concern, like what were the curricular projects kind of baked into the budget? Will curricular projects continue next year if we're having kind of a smaller ask? The answer is yes. So the work that we still had planned for next year will continue. So we have a limited number of academy related curricular projects. And most of those have to do with the pathway sequences for the electives. So Ken, if you could click on, just for the new members, because just to get used to the academy plan, this image here on the left where it says Danbury High School West Campus, these are the 3 academies on the West Campus. These are the 4, if you remember the tour, the 4 on the main campus. And so each one of these pathways here have curriculum that needs to be written. And so we have program sheets. So Ken, if you click on the program guide and electives link for me, please. We develop out a program guide for each of you could scroll down to the second page, for each of the pathways. And this is the emerging technologies and entrepreneurship and the pathways medical technology. So we've developed out some initial curriculum for the first of the sequences down where the blue where it says CTE courses. So exploration seminar is written, engineering essentials is written. And then in this last year and heading into next year, introduction for innovative design, which is still being worked on. And then the spring and into the summer, we'll be working on principles of innovative design. And so these are the curriculum. This is a lot of curriculum work across 21 pathways. And so most of our folks and our content experts are really locked up doing just that right now, along with our academy pathway leads and academy leads. We'll be working with them this spring to get that going. There's also industry partnership collaboration. So where there's a need to tap industry for some expertise. So there's a lot of that. So again, that is still baked into what we're doing. And it's really, really great work, but there's a lot of this type of work happening for next year. And we have some of this baked into the Perkins grant, and then also a little bit in Alliance and some other places. So we sort of tuck some curricular money in different places to continue the work, Title IV, et cetera. Okay.
Kara,
Oh,
I have a quick follow-up question
sure.
on that. I know we're focusing a lot on the academies as far as curriculum and stuff, but is there anything else in the budget on K through 8?
And could you just go back up? Yep. So we've kicked off some work with NCAC. We'll be coming back to reimagine the middle school. So we'll in the spring, you should be getting you'll get some contact maybe in a couple of weeks or so when they lock in the date. So we'll be doing visioning work around 6-8 to build new pathways, pre-academy pathways at the middle school level. Okay. In addition, the middle school has done a lot of curriculum work around math in the last couple of years, the IM math. We have a lot more work to do there. And then K5, massive rollout. We're in our first kind of, we're not rolling out, we're in our first full field implementation of the Art Core curriculum, where everyone now has it. And we're coaching into that right now and working on tweaks and improvements in that curriculum. So that's ongoing work with curriculum that now exists that we're continuing to make better. And those are tier 1 improvements across the system. And same thing with math, although literacy K5 is the real focus there. And in middle school, really the math pickup and then the pre-academy. So there's professional development. There's a lot of things in the work there. In addition to that, we've partnered with a group called TNTP that's going to be starting some work with us to kind of build a coherence plan around what effective instruction looks like across the district. And so we'll be engaging teachers and teacher leaders in that work as well. And we've already paid for that for the year. So that's kind of also baked into the budget as well. Sustaining that work moving forward is a little bit of a question mark, but for next year, we have a plan.
Can you expand a little bit on what TNTP is?
Right. So it's technical support it helps with facilitation of, so so if you remember FDS, Future Design School, I don't know if you remember Future Design School, but they helped us with visioning of our portrait of the graduate. And we get right down to like the rubric level where we're measuring ourselves against standards that we've agreed to. And that's a pretty, it's a challenging facilitation process. And so sometimes we use outside technical support to help push on the system for that process. TNTP is another group that's similar that will help us do that at K-12. And so it's a technical support group. It's education based.
So that's not in next year's budget, that's coming out of this year's budget?
Right now, it's in this year's budget. Yep. And so that work is starting now, and it'll run through the summer. But that's out of this year's budget.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And I think is that the last slide, Ken? Oh, this was the last one. This is an important one. So, Ken, you don't have to click on it, but the FY27 is the presentation that everybody already received. So I do have it in here, and I could share this with you. But the question was about, how are we planning for, like, what does this look like after this year? So if you're talking about fiscal year 2028, and we could start to dig into that, and again, with a scalpel and not a high level roll up, like wholesale swing at things. But if our general fund is at 175 and we're rolling up at 5%, and I say 5% because you have contracts that range anywhere from 3.5% to 6%, 7%, depending, right? We're still negotiating contracts. We have bus transportation at 6% next year. So, contracts, everything goes up. Supplies, we could probably hold the line on certain project lines and supply lines, or reduce those to kind of offset the contractual just cost of inflation and shipping and all those things. But if you just rolled up flat at 5% in our general fund, that's an $8.7 million increase, just wholesale, right? And in grants, just Alliance, now we have $56 million in grants, so I'm not including all of them, but where the place to really focus in on is Alliance, which is a $39 million grant. It's our largest grant. And in Alliance, we have about $26 million in salaries, and another 7.9 in benefits. So if you were to roll that up 5%, or even 4.5%, teachers alone are, I think, are 4.6. I go back into the book. There's a $1 million cost to that. So, $26 million, 5% is like 1.3 million just on the salaries there. The Alliance grant, unlike this year, can no longer sustain its own increases. This year, heading into 27, we're absorbing the increase of those contractual roll-up. Heading into, and the benefits, again, we were able to reduce benefits, but the healthcare, those continues to go up. There'll be an unknown factor there. And so 5%, I would say, would be on the low side of a healthcare increase. So I'm just using 5% across the board. You're looking at a double-digit ask for sure, unless there's some level of intervention legislatively to help with offsetting the cost of living. Particularly in Alliance, where we've got $26 million in salaries. And again, Mike, we just finished with the FY27, so we could start to dig into a 3-year projection over time. Once this budget lands a little bit, we can start to dig into that.
Okay, do we have any questions from anybody? Any board members?
I have a question. I don't know. It's about transportation.
Mm-hmm.
I know it. I thought I saw we need 8 new buses, and it's funny. All of a sudden, I'm noticing that so many buses have hardly anybody on them. Like there's like half full.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if there are ways to consolidate maybe routes or things like that. And of course, without too much disturbance, because I would imagine kids don't want to get up any earlier, or parents don't want their kids waiting, but maybe there's just a little tweaks. I have, I don't know. That was my thought process. And I don't know.
Sherry, it's a
Or
great
how do you I'm sorry, excuse me, and how do you measure like all these people that just drive their kids to school? I
Yeah.
mean, can you measure that in the beginning of the year? Oh, well, 55% of people are bringing their kids to school anyway, or now you got 50% drivers. I don't
Right.
know. I was
Yeah.
just thinking, is there a way to do that?
It's a great question. The rider participation fluctuates, not only year to year, but it also fluctuates within the year. So, for example, right now, we're having a jam up in a couple of our schools with the number of parents dropping off. That's causing an issue because they don't want to, students don't want to stand out. They don't want the students to stand outside in the cold. Uh,
Right.
Waiting for the buses. The bus has been a little bit slower lately because of the snow and the narrowness of things. So everything's taking longer. So the routes have become a little bit less predictable, and parents got to go to work, so they want to come and drop off. So from season to season, beginning, everybody wants to drop their child off at the beginning of the year.
Mm,
And then in the winter, you start to see a little bit more. And then in the spring, that changes also. But in terms of the ridership on the buses, the bus company like part of the rule is less than an hour. So they don't want students on for more than an hour.
mhm.
And so depending where student we're coming from, traversing across the city, the routes are designed to keep the riders, under an hour. And so packing the buses in some cases, unless it's really isolated to a particular area in town, um, creates inefficiencies and very long rides, which
Mhm.
causes, a
Yeah.
break in our contract and others. But the our transportation director is, she's very good and she does do a great job of consolidating, and they're always looking at other ways to consolidate the runs. So with the addition of the with the addition of Danbury High School West and students coming from all over the city for two different buildings, that does create a little bit more um, traffic across all parts of the city, which is why some buses are more full than others.
Okay.
Um, we've had we've combined last year to build efficiency. We combined the high school run and the middle school run, which saved us, I think, almost 10 buses.
Wow.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
and there's still some, gruffling around having combined with middle school, the high school and the middle school. I still get those emails from time to time. It's not as much, but I do get them.
Yeah.
So, we could add 10 buses back in, but that's, $80,000 a bus. It's quite an expense. So right now, I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah.
Um, if Kelly, who our transportation person is, may only need 5 or 6 buses by the time she's done programming the routes. And the
Mhm.
technology certainly helps. We're getting more efficient because of technology, planning the routes out. But there's always a possibility you could need more. Um,
Yeah.
and the other factor also is that our special needs students require very specialized buses, and that's
Mhm.
also very expensive. Some of them are almost one-on-one. Some of them are 4 or 5 to a bus. The smaller buses are actually more expensive than the large buses, believe it or not.
Wow.
And then we have to have a monitor on there as well. But I agree. So there's times I see the buses go by and there's not, as money as you would think on there. It's hard to tell. So, they could have dropped off. Sometimes they fill up a bus and 1 or 2 stops and half the bus empties out. So, but we've had very full buses in the past. I think it's better now than it has been in the past.
Mhm.
But the settling of the routes will really start to take shape once the last phase of the high school's open. Of it be a stronger predictor of where you can really consolidate. Because even if she consolidates now,
Yeah. It'll change.
it's going to change. So
Mhm.
we're kind of holding around that 8 bus mark right now, and that could go up or down about 80,000 depending on how many buses she puts in.
Thank you,
It's a great
Kate.
question.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Anybody else with questions? I don't see anybody's hand up. Okay, well, if you do have questions and you think of something after we adjourn for the evening, please, reach out, send in your questions. If you think of something in the morning, send in your questions. We're here, Kara will be able to get the answers for you before our meeting tomorrow night. So, Kara, do you have anything else to add, or Mike or anybody else before we?
No, that's really it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, if nobody has any other questions, then I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Kate. Do I hear a
Sorry,
second?
Sherry.
Hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Cindy. Okay, all in favor?